I was staring at my computer screen at 11:47 p.m. on New Year's Eve, watching the download counter on my app hit 7 figures while my phone buzzed with calls from venture capitalists. Just 1 week ago, I was jobless, betrayed, and watching my life's work get stolen by my boss's girlfriend. But as I prepared to hit send on the lawsuit that would destroy everything they built on my code, I couldn't help but smile at how perfectly my revenge had played out. I never thought a handshake could change everything. Kevin Walsh, 28 years old, and 3 years into what I believed was my dream job at TechFlow Solutions. December 15th, 3 years ago, started like any other Tuesday morning, except Richard Sterling, my boss, actually looked excited to see me. "Kevin, my office, now." He was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Richard was the kind of CEO who wore expensive suits but still ate gas station sandwiches for lunch. Weird combination, but it made him seem approachable. That morning, he was practically bouncing in his leather chair. "Big changes coming after the holidays," he said, leaning forward conspiratorially. "Your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed. That promotion we discussed, let's just say you should start thinking about what kind of office furniture you like." My heart hammered against my ribs. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, 3 years of debugging other people's messy code, 3 years of believing that hard work actually mattered. Finally, it was paying off. "There's just one thing first," Richard continued, his smile widening. "We're bringing in someone new who needs comprehensive training. I want you to handle it personally." The next morning, Amy Chen walked into our office like she owned the place. 24, fresh-faced, wearing designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. But here's the thing. She seemed genuinely nervous about starting her first tech job. "I've heard amazing things about you," she said, shaking my hand with both of hers. "Richard says you're the best mentor in the company." Well, who doesn't like flattery? I threw myself into training Amy with the enthusiasm of someone who thought he was building his future team. Every morning, she'd arrive with coffee for both of us. She remembered I liked it black, and we'd dive into code reviews, project management, client relations. Amy asked thoughtful questions. She took detailed notes. She even laughed at my terrible programming jokes. "Why do Java developers wear glasses?" I'd ask. "Because they can't see," she'd respond, rolling her eyes but smiling anyway. But Amy's questions weren't just about the job. She was fascinated by my side project, a productivity app I'd been developing during lunch breaks and weekends. The app used AI integration in ways nobody else was attempting. Revolutionary stuff, if I do say so myself. "You built this entire interface yourself?" she'd ask, leaning over my shoulder to study. "The code. The algorithm for task prioritization is incredible. I was proud of that app. Months of late nights, testing, refining. I'd used some of TechFlow's development tools to polish it, but the core idea, the innovation, the sleepless nights debugging, that was all mine." "Richard mentioned you might patent this through the company," Amy said one afternoon in late December. "Smart move, getting corporate backing." Actually, Richard and I had only discussed the possibility, nothing concrete. But Amy seemed to know details I hadn't shared with anyone. Then there were the small things that didn't quite add up. Her clothes were expensive for someone on an entry-level salary. She had meetings with upper management that she'd casually mention, then change the subject when I asked about them. Once, I saw her leaving Richard's office after hours, but when I mentioned it the next day, she claimed she'd been working late in the main lab. Makes sense, right? New employees sometimes need extra guidance. December 23rd arrived with that electric feeling you get before major holidays. The office buzzed with excitement about time off, bonus announcements, and fresh starts in the new year. Richard had scheduled a meeting with me for the next afternoon, Christmas Eve, to discuss exciting developments in my career path. I went home that night, thinking about office furniture and team management strategies. Amy had wished me luck with a smile that seemed almost sympathetic. But nothing could have prepared me for what Richard had actually planned for Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, 4 p.m. I walked into Richard's office expecting champagne and congratulations. Instead, I got a masterclass in corporate betrayal that would make Machiavelli proud. Richard wasn't alone. Amy sat in the chair across from his desk, wearing a black dress that definitely wasn't from Target. Her nervous new employee act had vanished completely. She looked comfortable. too comfortable. "Kevin, sit down," Richard said, but his lottery winner grin was gone. "We need to discuss some changes." Changes. That word hit differently when spoken in past tense rather than future tense. "Due to company restructuring, we're eliminating your position effective immediately." Richard's voice carried all the warmth of an automated customer service message. "Amy will be assuming your responsibilities." The words bounced around my skull like pinballs. Eliminating my position? But what about my promotion? What about 3 years of dedication? "I don't understand," I managed to say, though part of me was starting to understand perfectly. Amy leaned forward, and that sympathetic smile from yesterday made horrible sense. "Kevin, you've been an amazing mentor. I've learned so much from you." Learned so much. Past tense. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. "Wait," I said, looking between them. "How long have you two known each other?" Richard chuckled. Actually chuckled. "Amy's my girlfriend, Kevin. Has been for 2 years. She needed to understand the business from the ground up before taking on a leadership role." 2 years. Amy had been with Richard for 2 years, while I trained her for 3 months, while I shared every detail of my job, my projects, my innovations, while I handed her the keys to everything I'd built, but the real punch to the gut was still coming. "About your little app project," Richard continued, shuffling through papers on his desk. "Impressive work, really innovative AI integration. We'll be filing for patents under Amy's name, since it was developed using company resources and company time." The room started spinning. My app, my months of late nights, my breakthrough algorithm that nobody else had figured out. "That's my work," I said, my voice cracking like a teenager's. "I developed that concept before Amy even started here." Amy's expression didn't change. "Actually, Kevin, I have documentation showing I contributed significantly to the development process. And since you use TechFlow's servers, development tools, and worked on it during company hours," she had documentation. Of course she did. Every question she'd asked, every time she'd looked over my shoulder, every casual conversation about my innovation, she'd been building a case. Richard stood up, straightening his tie. "We appreciate your contributions, Kevin, really. But business is business. Security will escort you out. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, which is generous considering the circumstances." Generous. 2 weeks pay for 3 years of loyalty. The security escort was humiliating. Box of personal items, badge confiscated. Watched like a criminal while I cleaned out my desk. Amy wasn't at her workstation, probably celebrating somewhere with Richard. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold. I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen, replaying the conversation over and over. Every interaction with Amy took on new meaning. Her expensive clothes made sense now. She wasn't some broke recent graduate. Her meetings with management weren't extra training sessions. Her detailed questions about my app weren't admiration. They were reconnaissance. December 26th, I discovered something interesting. My admin access to TechFlow's servers was still active. Holiday skeleton crew in IT, apparently. Sloppy security for a tech company, but their mistake was about to become my opportunity. I could see everything. My original code, time-stamped and documented. Email threads I'd never seen before. Internal messages between Richard and Amy dating back to October, discussing their acquisition strategy for my app. They'd been planning this for months. One email from Amy to Richard made my blood boil. "Kevin's so trusting. He shows me everything without hesitation. This is going to be easier than we thought." Another from Richard. "Make sure you understand every aspect of his development process. We need to be able to claim comprehensive contribution." But here's what they missed in their elaborate scheme. I'm not just a developer. I'm a paranoid developer. I keep backups of everything. My personal GitHub repositories contained every iteration of my app development, complete with timestamps proving I'd started the project 6 months before Amy walked through our doors. More importantly, I'd been smart enough to do the core development on my personal equipment. Yes, I'd used some company tools for polish and testing, but the foundational code, the breakthrough algorithm, the innovative interface design, all of that existed independently of TechFlow. Richard and Amy had stolen my job, but they couldn't steal my brain. December 28th, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, I was going to launch my app independently, not just to prove a point, but to show them what real innovation looked like when it wasn't filtered through corporate politics. My developer network rallied around me faster than I expected. Marcus, who'd left TechFlow 2 years earlier, connected me with his startup friends. Sarah from my coding bootcamp days offered to help with user interface improvements. Even my college roommate, who'd become a marketing consultant, volunteered to help with launch strategy. "This is your chance to show them what you're really capable of," Marcus said during our planning session. "No corporate bureaucracy, no stolen credit, just pure innovation." December 30th, we went live. The timing was perfect. New Year's productivity apps were trending, and mine offered features nobody else had developed. The AI integration I'd spent months perfecting caught fire on social media. Tech bloggers started reaching out within hours. But I had one more card to play. My lawyer had been busy during those 3 days between Christmas and launch. Intellectual property theft charges, complete with documented evidence of my original development timeline. Email records showing Richard and Amy's premeditated plan. Recorded conversations from my final meeting that I'd captured on my phone. When you're getting screwed over, always hit record. Best advice I never thought I'd need. December 31st, 6 p.m. TechFlow's attempted patent application crumbled under legal scrutiny. My app had reached 50,000 downloads and was climbing fast. Richard's phone calls had shifted from threatening to pleading. Amy, apparently, wasn't handling the pressure well. Marcus heard through industry contacts that their relationship was imploding. Turns out stealing someone's life's work puts stress on romantic partnerships. Who would have thought? The best part? I had documentation of everything they'd done, but they had nothing legitimate on me. My revenge was perfectly legal, thoroughly documented, and absolutely devastating. As midnight approached on New Year's Eve, I realized something profound had happened. This wasn't just about getting even anymore. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. on New Year's Day. Not from friends wishing me Happy New Year. These were unknown numbers with area codes from Silicon Valley, New York, Boston. Venture capitalists who'd apparently spent their New Year's Eve researching my app instead of drinking champagne. "Kevin Walsh, this is Jennifer Martinez from Apex Ventures. We need to talk." By noon, I had 12 missed calls and 47 emails. My app had hit 200,000 downloads overnight. The AI integration was getting shared across LinkedIn by tech executives. Industry blogs were calling it the productivity breakthrough of the year. But here's the thing about success. It makes people nervous, especially people who thought they'd already won. Richard called at 1 p.m. His voice sounded different, strained. "Kevin, let's be reasonable here. Maybe we can work something out." Work something out? 3 days ago, he'd had security escort me out like a criminal. Amazing how quickly business is business becomes, let's be reasonable, when the tables turn. "I'm listening," I said, though I wasn't planning to agree to anything. "The legal situation is getting complicated. Maybe we rushed into the patent filing. Maybe there's room for negotiation. Maybe. That word carries a lot of weight when your company's reputation is circling the drain." My lawyer had been busy over the weekend. Turns out, intellectual property theft isn't just embarrassing, it's expensive. TechFlow was facing potential criminal charges. Their investors were asking uncomfortable questions. Amy's name was being dragged through tech industry forums as the girlfriend who stole code. The media picked up the story January 2nd. David versus Goliath narratives sell papers, and mine had all the right ingredients. Hard-working developer, corporate betrayal, innovative technology, perfect timing. Local news stations wanted interviews. Tech podcasts were reaching out. Sarah, my marketing friend, was having the time of her life managing the publicity. "You can't buy this kind of exposure," she told me. "Authentic underdog stories are marketing gold." Meanwhile, TechFlow's world was imploding in spectacular fashion. Their stock price dropped 15% in 2 days. Richard's LinkedIn profile started getting flooded with comments from former employees sharing their own stories of corporate mistreatment. Amy deleted her social media accounts entirely. The legal documentation was ironclad. My timestamps proved I'd developed the core algorithm months before Amy's hiring date. My personal repository showed the complete development timeline. Those internal emails between Richard and Amy provided smoking gun evidence of premeditated theft. But the most satisfying evidence was a recording I'd made during my final meeting. Richard explaining how they'd planned everything. Amy admitting she'd documented my work for patent purposes. Their own words, destroying their own case. January 5th. Brought the settlement offer, 7 figures. TechFlow wanted this to disappear before more investors pulled funding. They're terrified, my lawyer explained. Criminal charges could mean jail time for both of them. Civil suits could bankrupt the company. They're trying to cut their losses. 7 figures for 3 months of planning and a week of execution. Not bad for a supposedly naive developer. The settlement came with conditions, of course. Non-disclosure agreements. No further public statements about the theft. But by then, the damage was done. The tech industry had already rendered its verdict. Richard's reputation was finished. Amy would never work in tech again. TechFlow lost 3 major clients and half their development team within 2 weeks. January 15th, I signed the lease on my new office space. Same building where TechFlow used to be located, 2 floors higher. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. My app was approaching 500,000 users. Venture capital firms were competing to fund expansion. I was hiring my first employees, developers who'd left TechFlow after seeing how the company treated loyal workers. 3 months later, I was running a 15-person company with backing from 2 major investment firms. Richard and Amy had both left town. TechFlow declared bankruptcy in April, but revenge, I learned, is just the appetizer. Building something better than what they stole from you, that's the real victory. My phone buzzed at 11:58 p.m. on New Year's Eve. Another venture capitalist. I silently declined and watched my download counter tick past 1 million users. The champagne sat unopened on my desk. 12 months later, my company had 62 employees and offices in 3 cities. TechFlow's bankruptcy auction happened on a Tuesday in April. I didn't attend, but Marcus sent me photos of their office furniture being loaded into trucks. Richard's expensive desk sold for $43. Amy tried reaching out in May through a mutual connection. Apparently, she was sorry about the misunderstanding and wondered if we could put the past behind us. The mutual connection was Marcus, who delivered her message with the kind of grin you'd expect from someone watching karma work over time. I never responded. Some conversations aren't worth having. Richard's LinkedIn profile went dark after the bankruptcy. Industry rumors suggested he'd moved to his parents' house in Ohio and was selling insurance. Amy disappeared entirely from professional networks. Their elaborate scheme had lasted exactly 8 days before imploding spectacularly. The tech industry has a long memory for betrayal stories. My app became a case study in innovation, but their names became cautionary tales whispered in startup circles. Don't be like Richard. Don't pull an Amy Chen. But here's what surprised me most about the whole experience. Revenge stopped mattering after the first quarter. Building something meaningful, hiring people who deserved better, opportunities, creating technology that actually helped users, that felt infinitely better than watching my enemies fail. Sarah, now my head of marketing, framed that first newspaper article about our success. From betrayal to breakthrough, local developers' app revolutionizes productivity. It hangs in our conference room, not as a trophy of revenge, but as a reminder that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing you'll ever build. My settlement money went into employee stock options and research development. The lawsuit documentation stayed sealed, but the precedent it set protected other developers from similar schemes. New Year's Eve, 1 year later. Same date, different life, entirely. As I finally opened that champagne and looked out at the city lights from my new office, I realized something profound had happened over these 12 months. I'd stopped being the guy who got screwed over by his boss and his boss's girlfriend. I'd become the guy who built something better than they ever could have imagined. Sometimes the best revenge is simply outgrowing the people who tried to bury you.